and welcome back to another episode of Elevate and Accelerate. I'm your host, Dak Viscomi, and today we've got a really exciting conversation happening with none other than Ryan Ruff. So before we get into that, we're going to be talking about social media. In our line of work, we were dealing with entrepreneurs and business professionals in many different industries, and we talked a little bit about social media in the past, but really we want to dive in a little bit deeper about what options are out there for you, what kind of things are you facing, and on what types of stuff do you have to compromise on, and what should you or should you not be compromising on. And so without further ado, let's get started. So like I said, Ryan Ruff is joining me. He's an Emmy Award-winning, NBC News, former NBC News anchor. He comes with a whole world of experience and expertise when it comes to content development, producing TV shows, coming up with all sorts of, things for content, and starting there and now working with us. And so I'm just super excited to have this conversation with Ryan again today, and just helping to pick his brain on how this stuff works. So Ryan, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, of course. No, I appreciate you inviting me on. It's always fun to get to hang on in this medium with you, Zach. So we had a good conversation today. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, man, definitely. So look, we had talked about this a lot, and we even did a little bit. We just came back from our 13th annual Success Summit, right? And just an amazing event, and had hundreds of people there, or at least a little over 100 people that were there this time around. And so we talked a little bit about social media and the options that are out there for people. But before we jump into some of that, I'd love to hear from you a little bit more about, in your experience now, and having worked with so many clients and helping them to create content, and even your history in creating content, how valuable is content, first of all? And then how important is it with taking the value of content and then inserting that into social media in today's market?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. I'll go back to the beginning of what you mentioned. Yes, I am a former television news anchor. I was the 11 o'clock news anchor for an NBC affiliate station up in the greater Elmira, New York area, which is right around the Finger Lakes. I produced the 11 o'clock news in addition to anchoring it. After that, I had moved in towards working with different advertising agencies, and then eventually found my way over to DNA Films, which is our documentary division of the celebrity branding agency. And so I bring that up to say, I'm well-versed in creating strategic content to leverage something in a lot of different mediums and different durations of content. So when we talk, today's conversation is predominantly surrounding social media. So let's start with content, and then we'll talk about social media. Content is king right now. Staying in front of your audience, not just a generic audience, but your audience, and that's your current clients, your prospects, your realm of business, is just vitally important. You want to stay relevant. You want to stay, positioning yourself as that authority in your realm. And the way to do that is through content. And we're going to talk a little bit deeper. I know, Zach, you and I have passionate feelings about the idea of quantity versus quality when it comes to content. But quality content is just so important. And when you're creating that content, another great thing that I know we're going to double click deeper into is it's in your voice. It's you. And when you take that content, and sure, maybe it's a TV show, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a documentary you were part of, and it sits there in the medium that it was meant to be created in and doesn't really do anything for you on your social media, well, you're really holding yourself back from the legs that content could really have and could really take you. So taking your content, repurposing it, and then allowing yourself to put that out on social media to connect with your different audiences on your different social media platforms is just a way to kind of further the reach, further the frequency of the message, and allow you and your brand to get out in front of your prospects. It's just pivotally important in today's day and age. But Zach, I think the common thread amongst most people is they just don't have time for social media. They don't like it or want to do it. It's like that nagging thing in the back of their mind. But gosh, is it pivotally important?
Man, such a true statement, in that I know for me personally, I've talked to my friends about this, other people as well. It's like right now where we go for information, and when we want to find out more about anything, there's really only a few places that you go at this point, right? And that's like, for some people it's TikTok, but mostly it's like Instagram and YouTube, right? Like I've done a whole bunch of work on my car, and YouTube University certificate, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so that's number one. But then number two, with Instagram and the hashtags and the different things, it's like people are going to social media channels and streaming services and different things like that a lot of times before they're even going to somebody's website. And a lot of business owners that I know personally have been building their business off of just social media, and putting content on social media, and their website is secondary. It wasn't that long ago that your website was your primary place that you were driving traffic. And it still should be a place that you're driving traffic, right? Don't get me wrong, but the role of social media is continually playing a larger and larger part in how we connect with people, and how we run our businesses. So
Hmm.
it was funny, actually. I was talking to somebody the other day about storytelling, and actually, I was teaching the workshop out in Beverly Hills, and one of the things that social media is the current evolution of how people tell stories and their stories, right? And it's like, if you go all the way back, and I should do an episode on this, of the history of story, and storytelling, and how it's really come a long way. But it started with cave drawings. Like, it literally
Right.
goes back tens of thousands of years, where the purpose of storytelling, whether it was a cave drawing, whether it was the oral storytelling, whether it was the written word, has always been to pass on knowledge to future generations. And that's how we've established the societies that we have now, by building on what has come before us. And the only way we've been able to do that with any sort of accuracy and growth is because of what has been passed down in that knowledge and
Yeah.
information. So storytelling is just finding new mediums, but the results aren't changing. And as the business owner, right, this is exactly what they're doing.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, your story. So many times we hear, what could my story mean? Like, sure, I've done some things, but like, who wants to hear my story? What? How could that possibly help? You would be astounded at the power of your story, regardless of what goes on inside of it. Because at the end of the day, we all face so many relatable challenges and relatable moments in our lives, and then that sense of empathy and sympathy kick in when you share your story. You allow yourself to be a little vulnerable and a little bit authentic. God forbid you're authentic. It's people are drawn into you. And because you are relatable in different ways, shapes, and forms to them. And if you can relate via your story to your prospects, to your current clients, well, I mean, people buy from people, and that right there is the essence of why we buy from people, is because we connect to them, and usually story is at the crux of all of it.
Yep. So look, let's get into some of the meat and potatoes of this, right? So, hey, you listener, like, I'm sure business owner, running your business, trying to figure out what your options are. Like, the reality is that in today's market, that you need to be on social media. And knowing that you need to be on social media, it's probably this like gnawing, like, oh, I got to do it in the back of your head. And oftentimes, with the conversations that we had, and I know that I've had with a lot of people, it's like they really only believe that they've got three options, right? And maybe some variation of that, but really, there's only three options that they have. Number one, you got to do it all yourself, right? Like, that's okay. So if I want to do this, I want it to be in my voice. I want it to be, with my wisdom, my expertise. Then I've got to do it. And obviously, that has its own pitfalls, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time to do that. You don't have time to
Yeah.
do that. It's like there's things that we're really good at, and sitting down and trying to figure out a post and creating the graphic for it and writing the copy and then posting it in my social. Like, we just don't have time for those things.
Yep. Takes time, energy, effort, planning, strategy. It's a lot more than just snapping a pic of what you're doing right now and saying, "Whoa, I'm having a good time," and then posting it. It's not that simple these days.
Yeah, it's really not. And so what ends up happening then in most of these cases is that people are like, all right, well, I don't have the time to do it. I can't do it on my own. I've tried, but it's haphazard, and it's not up to par. It isn't what it should be. and it's not positioning me as an expert, right? If anything, it's just sort of positioning me as this inconsistent person who's trying to do their social media, right? And so it brings you to option two, which is I've got to hire somebody to bring onto my team who then is going to be able to handle it for me. And now you're looking at a whole nother set of compromises, right? And look, at the end of the day, that's really what we're talking about here is that at any point in time, your decision that you have to make around social media of any one of these options requires you to compromise. So option number one, you're compromising on your time. You're compromising on doing what you do best. And for many of the people that we work with, where they're also doing the sales and they're working with the clients and they're closing the deals, now you're also compromising on opportunity to help grow your business because so much of your time is being taken up over here and doing your own social media, right? So that's one. In the second option, you hire an in-house social media manager, and now you've got to face the compromise of the type of time and money that it's going to take to train them, but then how much it's going to cost for you to keep them on your staff. So, I mean, look, Ryan, you are doing this for our clients, right? And you've got a team behind you as well, in some capacity and even in a growing capacity. So, just talk to a little bit about the effort that it takes. That probably you're not looking at just hiring one person; it's probably hiring multiple people.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, if you want social media to be effective and you want to go for that quality over quantity approach, which again we highly recommend at our agency, then it takes a considerable amount of effort and workforce to pull it off. And that starts with the pure content planning and the strategy around, okay, what are we going to post? Obviously, there needs to be timely content surrounding holidays, anniversaries to certain events and things that happen maybe in the company's history, big moments in the company, maybe new ads of I mean, there's a million and 10 reasons to be posting on social media. But if it's all ad hoc and it's done in some crazy fashion, you really confuse your audience about, whoa, what am I seeing? There's no continuity between the content itself. You need to make sure that your content as a whole has a real strategy and a plan behind it. Okay, then comes the execution on it, and the execution can't happen without a systematic calendar. So building out a content calendar and mapping out that road ahead so that ooh, that webinar 3 weeks from now, we can be teasing ahead to it amid some of the other content that's rolling out in a timely fashion. Now that's strategy met with the use of a content calendar. And then it's purely the process of executing, right? It's, again, I mentioned a moment ago, it's not as simple as snapping a picture on your phone and posting anymore. It is creative copywriting, the use of emojis and hashtags, tagging relevant parties that are in this. So as I'm adding up all these things, I'm sure you, the business owner, our audience, is thinking to themselves, he's right. There's a lot of time that goes into this process. So that's why I'm our senior content producer at the Celebrity Branding Agency, and I manage a team that helps us do this for our clients because it does take a team to be able to pull it off. So it's, again, if you try and do it yourself, it's a daunting task. And as you said, Zach, it takes you away from what you do best, and that's bringing in business, closing deals, growing your business, and working on it as a whole.
Yeah, and look, and thank you for that too, because here's the reality of all of this, right? Like you have to be doing social media, you hire somebody to do it, and then it's like, even if it's that one person, that's their full-time job. And in order to get somebody that's good, that's producing good content, they're still probably not writing it in your voice, and it's going to take some time before that they do. And then it's a full-time gig of coming up with content and doing it over
Right.
and over again. It's just it creates a lot. And so now you're staffing up just for a social media campaign, which a lot of times, especially in the business that we're doing it in, it's about building authority, right? So like, if it's not high quality, if it's not valuable content, if it's not appealing to your audience in a way that like inspires action or brings them to the next step of your sales funnel or whatever it is, then you're not accomplishing what you should be accomplishing and using social media in the first place. So now you're wasting time, energy, effort, and somebody else's resources. Like, it's just, there's so much that goes behind it as well. And I think subconsciously we all understand it. And it's why it always takes a back seat to the other things that we're doing. But it nags at us because we know it's important, right?
Right. And you know what, Zach, people, I think it's so easy to fall into that school of thought that's like, oh, it's okay. At least we're getting stuff out there.
Oh,
At least we're at
that,
least.
yeah.
And boy, is that a tough school of thought to come into with social media. And let's be honest, we're all guilty of it.
Mhm.
But what it really comes down to is being able to marry content and social media in an effective and strategic manner. And I know that's probably where we're taking the conversation.
Look, and look, we when you run into these compromises and you run into the issues and you know that you got to be on social media, then you try to go for the thing that is going to require the least amount of your time, the least amount of your effort, and the least amount of your resources, but still get something out there, right? So you end up settling. It's that compromise that I was talking about,
Hmm.
but it doesn't position you as an expert. Talking about National Cookie Day isn't helping your brand. It's not helping your business, right? Like posting, hey, real estate agents, hate to call you to the chopping block here, but on my social feeds, it's usually the biggest culprits are the real estate agents where they're posting these like, if you could live in this mansion for 4 days, but you couldn't get any food and water, would you do it? It's like, who the hell cares, man? Like, what does that have to do with me hiring you as my agent?
Yeah.
There's really nothing in. Maybe it's engaging because there's something about it that people are responding to. So I don't want to completely discredit it, but at the same time, like, so is every other real estate agent posting stuff like that. Or like, you see those pictures where they have the bathroom in the kitchen, right? There's like a toilet next to the the oven. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
cool, but like, how about you share information that's like showing me what you're doing for your clients, right? And so
Hmm.
that's kind of the next thing is like, okay, you can't do it on your own. That's option number one. So you'd have to compromise on a lot of things and time, energy, and effort, and everything else. Hiring a team isn't really in the budget for most people, and still again takes a lot of your time and sort of vetting those people and getting them on there. So the other option is to hire an agency, right? Now, I'm going to tell you that that's probably not even the best option for you either, because now you're compromising on your voice and on your wisdom. It may cost a little bit less than hiring a team, and so you're buying back some of your time. But that agency's job, that what they're doing to grow their business is getting a whole bunch of other people like you, right? And a lot of times they say like, hey, we specialize in content for financial advisors or for lawyers and attorneys, but they're doing the exact same industry type content for every other person. Now they might personalize it, but it's not customized. It's not in your voice. It's not you.
Exactly.
And so you're compromising on that too. And so while it may be a little bit more valuable content, it's still relatively generic content that they try to put in your voice. And so you're still compromising.
Right, it's like stock images. There are those jingles or music tracks underneath of things that you're like, I've heard that before. Well, you have. It's because somebody else used it in a social media post, probably surrounding the exact same topic before, and that's a kind of a ripple effect of that decision. It is going with the agency that's doing this for all these other type of people that you fall into that bucket of people. Most of the time, you're getting some cookie cutter type content.
Absolutely. So look, what is the option out there? Like, what are some other things? And I think before we jump into that, let's set the stage here of what exactly it is that we're talking about. And we alluded to it a little bit earlier. We are talking to the person who is putting value over volume, right? Quality over quantity. That's the game that we're in. That's the game that we're playing. Where social media is another type of media, which is a medium for sharing your story, the story of your prospects, the story of your clients. It's another form of media that is used to position you as the go-to authority in your field. So this isn't for the influencer, right? This isn't like, hey, I'm just trying to get likes and likes and likes and likes so that I can get endorsements and all these other things and ad space on my podcast and all those sorts of stuff. That's a whole different business model, right?
No, 100%. It goes back to honestly the foundation of our agency, Zach. There's the term celebrity expert that we deem is made up of two words, celebrity and expert, but it is one word, as we use it. Celebrity being that influencer kind of model in terms of somebody looking, a celebrity, because you've seen them places. They pop up on the billboards, the TV shows. They are known, shall we
It's a
say.
one to many relationship that feels like one to one.
Exactly. Yes. And then the expert side of that equation, like, look, some of the world's greatest minds about specific topics are locked away in a university somewhere and no one knows that they exist. They could be the smartest person about the topic that matters the most to you, but you have no idea who they are, how to have access to them, or any of the above. But when you marry those two, well, now we're talking about expertise, and we're talking about somebody who's known in their respective field or industry, that truly allows them to be that authority that you keep mentioning, Zach, is that authority in this space, who's known, who brings the expertise to the table. And because of that, you're trusted, you're sought out, all the good stuff. And it's finding that marriage of celebrity experts content, that value over volume, that's like the winning formula for social media. It's just tricky to get there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so you as the business owner need to ask yourself the question of, what am I going for? What is going to be my measuring tape? Is it popularity or is it authority? And we're talking to the one who just answered authority, because that's what this is. That's what the use is for. And look, it's difficult. Like I get it. We all, myself included. Like I was just talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about the number of views on some of the YouTube videos that I've done, even for this, right? And I've got one that's got like, I don't know, 150 or 160, and I've got another one that's got like 30. And they're like, don't you want more people seeing it? Like, aren't you going to promote it more and do this thing? And it's like, no, I want the right people to see it. It's not about more people seeing it, because if my mom and my grandma and my great aunt Betty, like if they're all looking at it, great, like that's awesome, but they're not my target audience. Like they're not the people, and like it doesn't matter whether or not they see me as an authority. What matters to me most is if those 30 people who watched that video were 30 people that were, entrepreneurs and business professionals who are trying to figure out how building a celebrity expert brand to grow their business is right for them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'll take 30 over 300 every day if that's the type of audience that I'm getting, right?
Exactly.
So,
yeah, exactly.
So, okay. So, all right. Answering the question, we're on it. This is all about authority. We are authority building content on social media. Media is a medium for sharing that authority, for building that credibility, for building that connection with your audience. And so what's the option, right? You've got these three options that we've talked about. You do it yourself, you hire a team, or you hire an agency. What do you do? Now, we're an agency. And so it's like, obviously we're going to say, hey, hire an agency, but that's not what I'm saying. You got to hire the right agency who's going to accomplish that. And that's what I really love about our social media program specifically. Now, caveat, I'm not telling you to hire us to do your social media. What I'm going to share with you and what we're going to share with you is how you can do it, right? You can do it on your own through repurposing and get it into your voice. But this is how we do it as an agency, where you don't have to compromise, right? Yeah. You don't have to compromise on it being your voice. You don't have to compromise on the amount of financial investment that it would take to hire a team. So you get our team of experts, but you get your voice, your wisdom, your brand, your expertise as a result, right? Yeah. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like repurposing. And Ryan, why don't you kind of walk us through a little bit of that process, because you're in it, you're in the saddle.
Yeah, I'm waist deep in this for our clients. So as our senior content producer for the agency, this is my realm of my domain, if you will. I work with a lot of our different clients across a variety of different industries, and the primary focus of this whole social media program that we've been working on with them is kind of divvied up into two big areas. The first of which I like to call content production. That's obviously the creation of that authority-driven content to position you as that authority in your space. The second kind of area is the social media side of things, the ability to disseminate this content across the platform, communicating with your audiences, building out that content calendar I mentioned earlier so that you have a strategic rollout of the content. It's kind of two... It's important to think about it in those two ways, because without the other, it's not a successful strategy, and they are independent of each other. So let's talk about content production first and foremost. A lot of what Zach had mentioned in terms of these different options out there, at the kind of the core of all these options, the winning formula is your voice. If you want this social media content to resonate with your target audience and really make the biggest impact it can make, well, it needs to be you. It needs to be you. It shouldn't be a third-party entity, shouldn't be an agency telling you what you need to post. It should be you. So what does that look like? Yeah.
I gotta jump in here because I was just talking to a client of ours who isn't on our social media stuff, but I was talking just about what you were talking about, and he was like, you are so right, because I did hire an agency and I worked with them for a little while, and I would have to go back and look at the content that they were posting because it was industry, it was correct for the industry, right? But it was very counter to what I talked to my clients about, right? It's like, so
Oh,
even though it was true and even though it was factual, it was going at it from an approach that that I actually say you shouldn't do, right? Like
oh
it was
wow.
one of my key differentiating factors was not going about it that way. That brought more success to my clients, and now they're
Mm.
posting the things that I say you shouldn't do, and it was like, oh my
Oh my
gosh, like,
God.
so he's like, I had to get rid of them, like, but then
Yeah.
you're back into square one, right? So it should be you, and it should be your voice, because that's what people are looking for.
So yeah, so our content strategy planning meetings essentially that we do with our clients, and what you could be doing yourself is thinking about your content on a broad scale, like what you want to do with maybe, let's say, a whole season of your podcast or your content series. And then also thinking about it granularly from episode by episode. And having that pre-plan is great for you. It allows you to kind of chart a course through your given topic of conversation on each episode to keep you on track, right? And to make sure that you hit each topic the way you want. A piece of advice that I always recommend to the clients that we work with and anybody out there that would take this on themselves is, when you're thinking about these content topics, stop trying to do these big, broad topics so that I can hit a bigger audience. That's not the right way to think about it. Nobody, do we really all appreciate content where they just scratch the surface of a very complicated topic? No, I want the answer. I want a piece of your expertise. That's why I pressed the play button in the first place. So inch wide on the topic, but a mile deep into the topic. Let them know why you're the expert, why you're the authority. So that's a really important part of that pre-production process that we work with our clients on, and really stress the importance of pre-production. Obviously, production, we go through the process of recording the content, through a great video interface like the one, Zach, you and I are using now here in Riverside.fm. Our team, we work to make sure audio, video is checking out, everything looks good. And then, of course, after the recording, we move into post production where we dress up the video, so it's not a glorified Zoom call. It's a real show now. It's got your custom branding, your company's color schemes, all the whole 9 yards. Really bring this show to life and crank that out on all these different platforms for dissemination. So that's kind of the content production side that I mentioned, Zach. It's the creation of the content, and there should not be corners cut during that process, because that's the backbone of what's going to move to the second area that I mentioned, is the social media side of things. Now,
What
the
I would
social media
imagine,
side, yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
so I would imagine too that like that content creation side of things is like Stephen Covey talks about, starting with the end in mind, right? And so your content creation is like, what do I want my audience to know? And a lot of times I think people hesitate to share their most valuable information. They hesitate to put that out there, and yet it's the very thing that's going to capture your audience and provide the value. Like, you think of all the people that are at the top of their game: Tony Robbins, Joe Dispenza, Jack Canfield, Brian Tracy, Lisa Nichols, you name it, right? And like, they're putting their best content out there and asking you to work with, like, to engage with it. A lot of it's even for free. And then if you want to go deeper into it, then you do it. And so it's like, in this, starting with the end in mind is like, what are the questions that my clients or prospects are constantly asking me? Like, what do I answer on a regular basis? Let's start with those things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what am I constantly having to re-educate people on because the industry has educated them poorly, or they just have no idea? Let's
Yep.
focus on those topics, right? And map them out. And then it makes it a whole lot easier, right? So,
Yeah.
okay. So then you record it, you get the video, you have these assets here. And then one of the key elements, right, of buying back your time or being able to do this on your own is the repurposing process, right? So now
Exactly.
you take
Right.
that and you turn it into what you're going to share with us right now.
Yeah, yeah. So that repurposing is really the key to success here. So you, the business owner, you just spent, call it an hour or two, planning and filming the content. Now let's turn that into a whole suite of different assets. I'm talking social media graphics to promote the release of the episode. I'm talking about little highlight reels. We like to call them snackable videos, but highlight clips from each of the episode that play great and go for great engagement on social media. press releases to announce, the dissemination of the brand new episode. I mean, a whole suite of content around the 2 hours or so, or 1 hour that you spent recording that. Now that to me is a maximization of time and effort,
Mhm.
and it's in your voice because you were at the focal point of that video. So there's our content. Now we've got a whole suite of content to go post online. And there's a lot of content, so that means a lot of posts over a long period of time. So we have the ability to bleed out these snackable videos I just mentioned, social media graphics, the episode itself, quote cards, all sorts of great stuff that's in your voice across a long period of time on your social media platform. And again, all of that circling back to the topic at hand of your video, which, as you just mentioned, Zach, could be a hard-hitting question that you're answering regularly for clients. So imagine this, and Zach, this is a conversation that I had just recently with a wealth manager client that I work with. He said, he was referred a piece of business, a prospect, a hot lead, if you will, with a high net worth business owner and family. They were getting ready to sell their business, and our client works in selling businesses. That's kind of his niche of wealth management. So client comes up to him, they have their first meeting, and he's going through his discovery process with this new prospect to see whether or not there would be a good fit. And in the client's mind, he knew they were a good fit to begin with, but that's his process. And it got to the point where he said, well, really right now, the next thing we should be doing for you is a stress test. We need to make sure that your existing financial plan is up to snuff. And if there are holes in the foundation, we can plug them. If there are strategies that can be optimized, we can do that. But I think a great starting point for us is let's do a stress test. But rather than spending the next hour together of me describing to you what a stress test is going to be, I actually just did a podcast episode on this. So I'm going to send you the link. When you go home today, check that out, take a look at it, and it'll educate you on the entire process of what's involved. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to spend the rest of our meeting just talking about you, your family, your goals, what matters for you. So what he did was he just killed two birds with one stone by using his content to redirect them towards a topic that he knew they were going to ask him about. And then B, redirected the conversation towards them, getting to build that human element, that human interaction there. It's just a beautiful execution, talking to a client. I was proud of him. He did a nice job with repurposing his content and leveraging it in a real world environment. So that's really it, Zach. It's the content production and all the suite of assets that goes into it with maybe an hour of your time. And then it's the posting and the dissemination, the content calendar creation, all of that coupled in one. That's what we do for our clients. That's what people should be doing out there for themselves and their business to maximize, their social media strategy. It's just at the end of the day, it might take an extra set of hands to be able to truly pull it off and pull it off well.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because having that insight and working with people is great. I mean, what an awesome story about how this content works, and this is the key here. It's checking the social media box without compromise, like we've been talking about. It's your voice. It's at a, if you're doing it with us, it's a reasonable price. But if anything, it's in your voice, and you're buying back a ton of your time by having the structure in place, by seeing how we do it, and then duplicating that. You're saving yourself time and energy and effort and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of other assets out there that could work for you. Right? Like, so maybe you're not in a position to actually hire an agency right now, but you're trying to figure it out. Well, you can record a video. Maybe it's not the same quality as which ours is, or something like that, or, whatever, but you could record a video. And then there's AI and other suites of services that like you could use to maybe make it a little bit easier for you. And they do some of the editing. And again, it's like, there's some compromise of not having oversight of, having to go back and do it, but you can duplicate this really at any level. And really, I think most of the time, what money buys you is time and quality, right? Like that's really what it does at the end of the day. And so how much you're willing to spend is usually determined by how high of a quality result you'll get, and how least amount of your time and effort is going to be needed in order to do it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where we make our money, right? Is sort of at that top tier, but still, I think cheaper than it would be to even hire one team member, right? But behind all of this, what I want you to see as the listener or watcher here is that this is more than just social media, right? It's
Hmm.
authority building. You've got a show, right? So when you record a video and you have a show intro and all these different things like you just saw on mine, welcome to Elevate and Accelerate, right? This is a show. It shows up on YouTube. Now it also shows up on podcasting platforms. So I've got a show and I've got a podcast. Both of those things create authority. It doesn't matter, again, how many people watch it. If I say to somebody, hey, I've got a show, I've got a podcast, immediately like, whoa, that's really cool. How do you do that? Like, what, like, tell me more. Like, because it automatically communicates authority to people. So it's more than just social media. Now, the whole other side of this that we haven't even talked about yet is how you then leverage that to grow your business outside of just the authority building process, like inviting on clients. So now you've got case
Hmm.
studies, inviting on people that you would want to partner with, like affiliates. So you're a financial advisor and you invite on a CPA to talk about what they do, or an estate planner or a tax manager, whoever it is. You instead inviting those people on, and then they're sharing your podcast to their list. And then if they ever have a question of like, oh man, I need a wealth manager. Hey, guess what? I know the person. I was just on his podcast. Why don't you check them out? Or on
Hmm.
her podcast, or whatever. And it's like it becomes this. It becomes something so much more than just social media, but you also get a powerful social media presence at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
I'm glad you brought up the business side of it too, because that is an important side of things. I mean, when I've been working with a lot of clients in this realm, Zach, and I think and a few of the questions that seem to come up is like, okay, so like, what's the long term plan, or like, what's the longevity of this content series? Filming this video content, and I say, well, it's evergreen. Frankly, there's a lot of different ways to do these episodes, if you will, in terms of that content creation, all of which can be beneficial for you. I think probably the three big ways. The first one, obviously, you, the business owner, are front and center on the camera, diving into, like I said earlier, an inch wide but a mile deep on a given topic of your expertise. Right? That's first and foremost easy. Second is having somebody, let's say, on your team, maybe a team member, a business partner, who has a nuanced area of the business that, maybe you brought them on and built your business out to accommodate their skill set, and they're very valuable and your audience would benefit from their value. Well, absolutely, bring on your partner, bring on that specialist that can share their insights on a given topic. And then the third is at what you just mentioned, Zach, which I love this, and a lot of our clients are starting to do more and more of it because they're just getting more comfortable doing the content and being in front of a camera and pressing the record button, but also they're confident in themselves and they're confident in the value that their content presents. So therefore, they have no problem reaching out to prospects, reaching out to referral partners, reaching out to their network to say, hey, CPA, I know off the air that you just did you just were part of a really big deal that was life changing for a client that we work on together. Why don't you come on the podcast? Let's talk about not that client specifically, but let's talk about that moment in their life, selling their business, a very complicated thing that so many other business owners out there are concerned with. We'll share our respective, expertise, our 2 cents on the matter. And now you've got two angles of expertise in this episode
Mm.
and two very different audiences from these two. Oh my gosh, just so much value that can be maximized from this content system and the social media as a whole. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Zach. It is so much more than a social media system. It just there's a lot to it. There's a lot of moving parts, and helps to have a team. But as we've been saying, this is what we believe in. This is that effective strategy we found that really true gets results for our clients, and we stand by it because at the end of the day, it's your voice.
Yeah, and as we've talked about on this show multiple times, your brand is your story, and branding is storytelling, and a great brand is a story that others tell for you. And so you have to tell them what story to tell. You have to give them a story to tell, and continually give them stories to tell. So it's like, as people are engaging with your content, as clients are engaging with it, it's like, even if you're a referral based business, you're like, yeah, I basically, I work mainly off of referrals. It's the only way it works. Well, are you giving your clients information and assets that allow them to be able to tell your story in a way that positions you as an authority to their friends and family members? Because no matter who they are, like you said earlier, people buy from people. They buy from people that they know, like, and trust. And so your client is telling a story, a version of your story. And so the more that you continue to tell their story, your story, and they understand your story and they share your story, the more aligned those two things are going to be. If you never share your story, and the story that they share about you could be two completely different things, because it's based on their experience and what they perceived, but it might not even be true, right? And so you want to get in front of that narrative and really show people your why and give them something to talk about. So awesome. Look, in all of this, at the end of the day, what do you do as the business owner? And what you want to do is reflect on, am I accomplishing these things? Am I providing valuable content to my audience that positions me as the expert, right? Can you ask that question? If you're not, then it might not be worth doing it. And it's one of those things where this is where we may start disagreeing with a bunch of people, where it's like, well, you should just do something, right? I'm not a huge fan of the iterative approach when it comes to authority and content building on some level. Now, I don't think you should wait until you're a perfect person in front of a camera, but I don't think you should wait to be doing it in your voice. I don't think you should compromise on some things, like not doing it in your voice and then just posting, like, today's national whatever day, and trying to engage your audience with generic and non-valuable content. So you've got to find the balance for what you have and what you're trying to accomplish. And then the other part of this too is, like, if you're not comfortable in front of the camera, which a lot of people aren't, we're talking about sitting down and then just talking about content. So stressor number one, how am I going to keep up with enough content to engage my audience? You'll actually find out there's a whole lot more content than in your brain than you even realize, especially if you go an inch wide and a mile deep. But you can also have somebody on your team interview you. I mean, it's a format that we do for a lot of people in their first year of doing our content system too, is Ryan, you or one of our other producers will be a co-host on that show and tee up the questions for the content for the expert, who's then going to answer those questions, right? So you can duplicate that with someone on your team. They don't even have to be on camera. They could just hold the phone, ask you the question, and then in post-processing, you can edit it out. You just answer the question in complete sentences, right? So there's different ways around that. But what I don't want is for your fear of not having enough content, of people not hearing what you have to say, not engaging with that content, of being afraid of being on camera, to stop you from doing the very thing that's going to help you take your business to the next level. We all know you have to do it. So now it's just a matter of doing it, and you can be creative in how you do that. That really presents the best option for your skill set and where you're comfortable. But growth comes from pushing that line, right? It comes from pushing our comfort zones, taking a little bit of extra risk. And this might be a really good area for you to start doing that. Well, Ryan, look, thank you so much for joining me today. I feel like we've got a lot of really valuable content in here. Your wisdom is great, having been in the trenches and continuing to work with our clients, but also bringing in your experience and expertise of the value of being prepared for this kind of stuff, of mapping out that content, of making sure that you have a strategy and a formula in place, even if it's just for the next couple of weeks or so. But that preparation is really important. And so just really appreciate you taking the time, joining me here today, providing your wisdom. And thank all of you for listening. I hope that you did find some value in this social media and our conversation around it. We're going to have more, because we really do believe that social media is extremely important. And we'll dive in a little bit deeper of the types of video content that you can do and stuff like that at a later date. But if you do find this podcast and this video series helpful, please like, subscribe, follow along. Would love to continue to produce great content and know that it's valuable for you. So if it is, hit that little button. And I look forward to talking to you next time on the future episode of Elevate and Accelerate. Cheers.